Hi everybody, this is Tim at Volgistics with your tip of the week for July 19, 2021. Now, as we're kind of coming out of the COVID pandemic, a lot of volunteer programs are starting to wonder about how this actually impacted their volunteer programs. I mean, obviously a lot of you were shut down, but the question remains, how many of those volunteers from before the pandemic are actually coming back to serve now as you're reopening? What I want to do today is go through some of the tools in Volgistics that we can use to get the number of volunteers who are serving again compared to the number that were serving before the shutdown. So we'll actually do this using sets. So we're going to create two different sets, one to look at volunteers pre-pandemic and another to look at volunteers now, so we can just do a little bit of math to get a percentage. And it's not a perfect way to get this information, but I think it gets us pretty close. So the first thing we're going to do is create a set to find volunteers that were serving before everybody was shut down. So let's go into sets, and here we'll create a new set, and we'll give this set a name. In this example, we're going to use pre-pandemic volunteers. And we're going to base this on the their service set rule. So we're going to use this set rule to find volunteers who had service recorded during the months before the shutdown. For our example, we're going to look at December 2019 to February 2020 because March is the month where everybody started getting interrupted. So we'll select the option here and we'll set it up like this. So volunteers that served at least 1 minute between the beginning of December 2019 to the end of February 2020. So these are our pre-pandemic volunteers. So then we'll just scroll down and click Finished. Now we want to look at the returning volunteers. So we're going to create another set that's going to be very similar, but we'll call this returning volunteers. So again, we'll base it on the their service set rule. Again, here we're looking at the months since we started to reopen and relaunch our volunteer program. So I'll do 1 minute of service between the beginning of March 2021 and the end of June 2021 because June just ended. And we chose June here because this is when, in Michigan at least, things are starting to open back up. So I'll go ahead and hit Finished here. And now that we've got these two sets, we can load them here on the Volunteers page. So we'll go to Volunteers, choose our set from the set dropdown. So we'll start with the pre-pandemic volunteers and click All. So here at the top, we get a count of the number of volunteers we had serving pre-pandemic. And then we can do the same thing using the other set. So again, we called this returning volunteers. And now we'll get a different number for the returning volunteers. Now, in the sample account, we didn't have to send anybody home because it's all pretend data. But in your account, your numbers will probably be quite a bit different than what we have here. But you can see a difference here. So if we were to take the returning volunteers and divide that by the pre-pandemic volunteers, we'd get a rough percentage of the number of volunteers who have returned since we reopened the program. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect because odds are you've got some new volunteers that came on either during the pandemic or after the pandemic, but it will at least give you a rough idea of the size of the volunteer program now versus then. I hope that's helpful for you as you try to evaluate the impact that the pandemic had on your volunteer program and put some numbers to it. If you have any questions about how this works or anything else in Volgistics, please send us an inquiry and we'll get back to you quickly. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.